Are you tired of playing small and ready to step confidently into your greatness and share your unique brilliance with the world? Well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to empowering individuals and leaders as they confidently navigate the twists and turns of life and career transitions. If you're seeking direction, connection, or just a little push to play bigger, consider this podcast your VIP pass to a community that genuinely understands your journey. Join me every week for candid conversations and practical guidance designed to help you navigate the challenges of life and business, foster a growth mindset, and cultivate meaningful connections. It's time to embrace your inherent power, define your unique purpose, and prosper in every aspect of your life. Let's get started. Hello. For those of you who are listening in on the podcast, happy Wednesday. So for those of you who are tuning in, are completely new to me, I am Sabine Gideon, the founder of Gideon Enterprises, and also the host of Power, Purpose, and Prosperity. And today we are continuing the conversation on the importance of networking or building strategic networks. And this entire month and for this entire series, I'm bringing on experts such as Cassie to come on and give you practical tools, tips, advice on how they leverage networking for their own businesses, as well as how they support their clients in being successful, whether they are, navigating entrepreneurship or the corporate world. So with that, Cassie is a career coach. And so for the last 8 years, Cassie has worked in career and professional development, coaching more than 700 clients on resume writing, strategic job searches, effective networking, interviewing, and so much more. Of course, LinkedIn as well. She doesn't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach to career coaching and is committed to tailoring her coaching to suit the unique needs of her ambitious clients. So with that, welcome to the show, Cassie. So excited to have you here and to have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to get together again. And, I love chatting about networking.
Yes. So I read your high-level bio. If you would, give the audience a little bit more background, and you can give us the Cliff Notes version of your career journey and what led you to do the work that you do today.
Yeah, of course. So I am a career coach, and much like was already read, I spend a lot of my time working with clients one-on-one to explore different career options, develop effective job search strategies, revamp their materials, a LinkedIn profile, a resume, all of those types of things. And I really got into this field because when I was an undergraduate student, I was doing the very classic change your major 5, 6, 7 times, had no clue what I wanted to do. And luckily, through a series of events, I ended up in a technical writing class where someone from the Career Center on my college campus came. And because of that, I started meeting with a career coach myself. And through those meetings, kind of had that aha moment, like, wait a second, this is a job. You can do this. And they were like, yes, it is. And so from there, I went on to graduate school. I studied higher education and student affairs with an emphasis on career development at Western Carolina University. And I have worked in career development, both on college campuses, but also career coaching in the private sector ever since.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So if you're completely new to me, I'll give you some grace. But if you've been around me for a while, you know that I love talking about networking. I love geeking out on different strategies, different ways to, really build relationships with people. I think we're past the stage of networking where what it used to be, years ago, where it felt impersonal, where it felt like, everybody was putting on airs, to now we've really, redefined it where it's about building relationships, supporting other people. And so the last few weeks, I've also noticed that you've been on a series around networking and sharing, very, very valuable tips to help people who are in that job search space in order for them to get noticed, in order for them to almost fast track their search, if you will. I think I don't know what the number is last year, but I believe last time I checked, it was something to the effect of 85% of the jobs that, were actually being gotten were through networking. And it wasn't through the traditional ways of posting your job post or going to places, but it was really people tapping into their networks, building their relationships, getting those referrals. So I'm curious to hear, what are you seeing since you are literally working with people who are in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked that statistic in a while either, but I know it is up there in the 80s somewhere. And I think that that's a trend we're just going to continue to see, especially right now in 2024 and for the last few months. And I imagine for the next few months, if not longer, the job market is really tough right now. And networking is like the one thing that I am really seeing have success time and time and time again. And the clients that I'm working with who are actively implementing networking strategies are having more success. They're having more interviews, they're getting more offers. And most importantly, in my mind, they're not just getting interviews and offers. They're getting interviews and offers with companies that they want to work for, that they feel good about, that they know are a good fit. And so I know we're going to dive into this so much more, but I feel like that really is such an important piece and selling point of networking, that it doesn't just lead to success, but it leads to more aligned success.
Yes, let's dive into that now, because I think that is such an important piece, right? It's one thing when you're just getting a job because you know such and such, but it's another where you've had people, you can have conversations, you know what the culture is like. It's not that, bait and switch type situation. So tell us a little bit about how, what specific tools, what questions are people asking, like how are they navigating that so that they can ensure that alignment?
Yeah. So when you're having conversations with people who are currently working at an organization or who previously did, you're able to get a little bit more of that inside scoop. What is it really like? Not just what they're putting in a job description or not just what they're saying their values are on their website, but what is it really like in the day-to-day there? And I think asking questions and just having conversations with people can allow you to get some of those examples. I love telling clients, like, ask for examples. Ask for an example that demonstrates the company's values. Whatever's listed on that website, ask the person you're networking with, what's an example of that? Or can you tell me how you've seen that in your role in this company, to really get a sense of if and how that company is living out in those values. I think along those lines, through conversations and asking questions about how people are managed or what the management style's like, what a project has been like, again, asking for some of those examples can really help you determine before you even go into an interview or before you even apply, if those are things that align with you. I'm working with a lot of clients right now who naturally care a lot about the work culture, but also caring a lot about the hybrid schedule, the remote work, flexibility, things like that. And again, I think that's something right through a conversation you can suss out pretty quickly. If you're like, so what is the, schedule like? How flexible are things? People are going to tell you, especially if you're having a little bit of a more casual networking conversation.
Yeah. And I'm curious, how do you get your clients to get to that space of even having the confidence to ask, right? I know I've been out of the job market for a while, but it is a scary space to be, right? It feels intimidating. And so oftentimes the mindset of the candidate is like, I want to show off as like my best self. Like I want to be able to answer the question. And I'm trying to, like, there's a lot of proving energy, if you will, whether it's conscious or unconsciously. And so for people to kind of do that pattern interrupt, to stop and say, okay, I am being interviewed. However, this is my opportunity to interview as well, to even ask these questions. Cause I know back in the day, like most clients would be like, I can't ask that. I don't want to come off as, being too picky or being difficult or being whatever. So how do you coach them through those, the inner critic, if you will, that comes up with all of these excuses or reasons why, they may not feel comfortable asking these questions?
This is such a good point, because we all do have that inner critic, and especially in some of these settings, it can be incredibly loud. So a couple things to keep in mind. If you're in a traditional interview, like if you've applied and you are in a real interview, that is a little bit different. But I do think important to remember that asking those questions from you to the employer is important because their answers are going to help you determine if it's a good fit. And ultimately, if you're going through the interviewing process and you're not asking those questions, there is a chance and a higher chance that you're going to then end up in a role, and 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from that time that you enter the role, you're going to be job searching again because you didn't ask those questions. So thinking about future you and having, a little bit of courage for future you to ask those questions to make sure that you are putting yourself in a scenario that you want to be in.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to remember that most of the time when we're interviewing for different positions, you're going through multiple phases and it can take a lot of time. It can require a lot of effort. And so if a company is doing something or has a policy or a belief or a value that doesn't align, the sooner you learn about that, the better off it is, because it doesn't. I could tell you some benefits of going through the interview process, even if a company isn't a good fit. But at the end of the day, it's not super beneficial for you to go through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews just to then be like, oh, that's your policy on flexibility and remote work. Like, that doesn't work for me. Yeah. So in the traditional interview setting, I think that's important to keep in mind. If you're not in the interview setting and you're in more of that networking phase, it can still feel like an interview and it can still feel like you want to put your best foot forward. But in those scenarios, I really encourage people to approach it from a learning perspective. You are there to learn. You're there to ask questions. And often when I'm networking with people, I say that to them. I want to learn. I want to learn more about your career path. I want to learn more about the company. I want to learn what advice you have for me. It's a learning approach. And I think that can often kind of soften the conversation. It can make it much more casual and it can create a little bit more comfort. And the last thing I'll say for people who are feeling nervous, especially in a networking setting, try to remember that the person you're talking to said yes. If you are in that meeting with them, they said yes. And whether it's a phone call, a Zoom call, whether you're just interacting via email, like to a degree, they are saying yes by responding and scheduling that. So they want to be there too. They want to answer your questions. They know what they're doing. It's not like a big surprise that they show up in the Zoom call and you're asking questions like this. So try to keep that in mind as well. If those nerves and that, imposter syndrome or whatever it may be is popping up.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. And it actually makes me think about, even some clients that I've worked with recently who have been in that transition space. Luckily, in this particular case, some of them, they already are employed and they're looking at that next step versus some who aren't. And I think it makes a big difference when you are, in a space of some level of safety, if you will, and you're stepping out versus when you're kind of like that pressure, you feel that internal pressure. So that could also, I imagine, well, I know for a fact, impair or alter how you show up and what you think you deserve to gain out of these networking conversations. So one of the other things in terms of people who say yes, obviously right now there are a lot of people who are out of work. There are also a lot of open opportunities, right? If you look at the jobs report, it's up. So it's almost like it depends on who you're listening to or what it is that you're seeing or the environment that you're in. One of the things that I've always been a big proponent of is leveraging LinkedIn, right? Like you think of all of the social platforms out there. Where else can you go and see someone's title, or where else can you go and, learn about their background, where they went to school, what you might have in common with people. And so I'm always telling people like, look, if you want to meet and connect with someone, find them on LinkedIn, look at their background. Is there anything that you have in common with that person and having that be a common ground? But I'm also hearing from the marketplace that, people are reaching out and they are trying to have these informational meetings. And I can imagine that others on the other side are inundated with these requests. So what have you seen with your clients, or what have you advised some of your clients as a workaround so that they don't show up, if it's a second or third connection, like, hey, can we have an informational meeting? And, that person is either inundated or they have not established enough of a relationship for that person to want to say yes.
Yes, this is so true. And I think a couple workarounds to kind of consider with this is, first and foremost, like, use the network that you have. A lot of people, I know clients that I'm talking to, and just kind of the general approach to networking is like, I have to go find that person who's in the role I want to be in and potentially is 3 connections away. Start with the people who are in your immediate network. If that's LinkedIn, wonderful. I love it. I know you love that. Look at who you're already connected to. But also think about your even more immediate network. I always tell clients, I'm like, pull up your phone. We all have a contact list. If you have someone's phone number, likely that means you're connected to them well enough that you can reach out with a phone call, a text message, an email. But look through those people, because we often are going into this phase of networking and we kind of have that end goal, like get the connection, build the relationship, get the job. And then we don't even tell our most immediate people that that's what we're doing. I just had a meeting the other day with someone that I've known for like 2 years in a casual, like, friendship setting. And we sat down to work on their LinkedIn and they told me what they did. And I was like, that's what you do for work? I had no idea. The only times we've interacted, we haven't talked about work. And so then in that setting, I was like, wait a second, you need to talk to this person, that person, that person, all other people that they've met and interacted with. But it was simply just that we hadn't had that conversation among the times we interacted. So choose based on, who feels comfortable to you and all of that, but talk to your immediate network. Let them know what you're looking for and what you need, and see who they know. And I think that that can be a really strategic starting point. Also a lower risk starting point if you're feeling nervous about networking, to help some of those people, or to get help from some of those people who are in your immediate network, and to just see who do they know and who can they connect you to. Yeah. In addition to that, I think if you are on LinkedIn, you have to be looking for those commonalities and connections. You can do the cold outreach to a random person, but typically not going to be as successful. And the other thing that I'm finding super effective on LinkedIn, I think it always has been, but especially right now, is, again, using your connections to facilitate the next connection. So looking at who do you want to be connected to, or what companies do you want to gain connections with, and then looking at who's working at that company. There's a great filter on LinkedIn. You can go to a company page, click over to the people tab, filter all the way over. There's one that says second connections. So you can see right from there, who am I connected to that is connected to someone at this organization that I'm interested in. And then again, using your connections to ask for that introduction. And I think people, I don't know the statistic on this, but people are just statistically more likely to respond, even if they're inundated, if it's being facilitated through someone that they know and someone's kind of vouching for you. So I think those are a couple strategies. There certainly are others, but I'll kind of start with those.
Yeah, thank you for that. And 2 things that I'm noting to share with the audience: how you and I met twice, yes. Literally. But even along those lines of what you were saying, so with regards to, leveraging the tool, I'm starting to see a lot more job seekers engaging on the platform in different ways. So obviously, a lot of times when something happens, they'll announce, this is what happened. I'm reaching out to my network for support. There's the open to work thing that they can have. But I'm also seeing people tell more stories around their process and, how they're navigating this and what they're doing. So it's become more of a space of not only like, oh, hey, here's me, like, I'm looking for a job, but it's also like they're humanizing their job search process. And that is allowing them to reach a broader audience. And, the people who I imagine will be their potential employers get to know the person behind the experience. Is that something that you're seeing a lot too? Is that something that you advise your clients on?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing more and more of that, and on varying levels too, of people sharing their own experiences and sharing more content kind of in general on LinkedIn, regardless of industry or field or interest. I'm also seeing a lot of people interacting in other ways. So commenting on posts, maybe they're not sharing their story, that doesn't feel as comfortable, but where they're then interacting with other thought leaders who are posting on LinkedIn or other people who are having similar experiences and sharing in that way as well, which I think is really nice because it creates different levels. I work with a lot of clients who are like, posting on LinkedIn, it's not for me. That feels too scary. I'm not ready to do that. And so that's okay. You don't have to suddenly become this content creator that's posting on LinkedIn all the time, but you can still be engaging in the platform or on the platform through commenting on other people's posts, sharing other things. Some groups on LinkedIn are really active and smaller spaces to engage and interact. And I have a lot of clients who found really wonderful connections through groups on LinkedIn and that type of thing. So I think part of it is finding the spaces and the methods that work best for you to really balance that comfort, but to also make sure that you are being active and engaging.
Yeah, I love that. And along those lines with that initial outreach, I've had clients actually who, when they were in transition because they were impacted, and this is fairly recent still, like at least in the beginning, there used to be, I guess, the stigma around putting that up to open to work banner on. And so people felt exposed or vulnerable in some way. And then like I've literally had clients like, I don't want to do that. Like I feel like, they're still processing their emotions from the impact. So the thought of putting that out there makes them feel like they're exposed and they're vulnerable. But I'm seeing like when people do that, like people actually, support. You'll see comments that, I'm commenting so that I can boost this. Whenever I see one of those open to works, like I always do the support emoji. Literally, I've had people as I was mindlessly scrolling and seeing these posts of people who are looking at opportunities, I'd look to see, okay, well, and I think here's a key piece to add here, that don't just put the open to work banner on, include what roles you're looking for, because you need to tell people how to help you. And so for the people who will be like, I'm looking for jobs in XXX, these are the titles. There have been people who their first connections, I definitely never talked to them. And I'll see that post, I'll do the support, I continue to scroll, and bam, here's an opportunity with the title or the type of role that they had just indicated. And I will just shoot it like, hey, FYI, here's an opportunity. And I do that consistently. So I share that to share two things. One, people do want to support you. People are going to see your post. And even if they don't like it or they don't comment on, on the post, that does not mean that they have not seen it, and that if something clicks, that they won't remember to come back and support you if and when that opportunity becomes available. So every bit of support is not going to translate into a actual referral or a conversation or some type of interaction or engagement, but just know that when you put yourself out there and you're specific about what you're looking for, you then give others an anchor on what to look for to support you.
Yes, I think that's so true. And being specific in that way, there is a level of you have to know what you're looking for. You have to know what you want, because people can't help you. If you're like, hey, Cassie, can you help me? I'm looking for something. I'm like, okay, great. I would love to help, but what are you looking for? And you're like, I don't know. It's like anything. And I'm like, oh, well, I have like a mug here. Do you want that? And you're like, no, definitely not that. Like I could sit here and offer you everything on my desk, but if that's not what you're looking for, it doesn't help. So having ideas of what you're looking for, job titles, industry, specific companies, I think that's such an important starting point, and also something that can then lead to more networking. You don't necessarily have to have every single answer or an exact, like, these 1, 2, 3 things are all I'm open to. But giving people a starting point helps them help you more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious, are you seeing from a networking perspective, are you seeing more people stepping out into like traditional networking events, or is it still more of a reliance on like the virtual or social platforms?
I do still see mostly a reliance on social platforms. Certainly, I know people who are going to networking events and networking in person, and I think that can be really great and really effective if it makes sense for you. If you have access to an event like that, it can be great. But I do see way more of a focus on social platforms, of course, LinkedIn being the big one. But I also think I'm seeing and encouraging clients to look in other spaces too. For all the reasons you said earlier, I love LinkedIn. I love that you can see someone's career trajectory. You can see where they went to school, and you can very easily find those common connection points. But I also think there's a lot of value depending on who you are, what other social platforms you're on, depending on the jobs and industries that you're interested in. I am just continuously, I feel like I've been saying this like probably since 2021, but just continuously blown away by the networking that is happening on other platforms and in kind of niche communities. I've had clients over the last couple of years who have joined different Discord communities, and whether that be purely interest-based, but then in those interest-based communities, able to connect to other people who then are networking for a job and career perspective, but also in Discord communities that are very career and industry related. Seeing people who are posting videos on TikTok and Instagram Reels and other spaces, even a very casual video. I'll never forget this one. It was a college student who posted a video, and she was just like, hey, I'm studying this. I believe it was something like sports management. She's like, I want an internship. I'm clueless. I have no idea what to do. Like, can anyone help me? Like, I want to connect with other people who are in this industry. And that video, I don't know, I feel like it blew up. But even if it just had like 10 or 20,000 views, I remember the comments being full of both other students who were like, I'm studying that too, but at this university, like, let's connect on LinkedIn, seeing professionals in the industry share advice and stitch the video. And so, of course, it depends on what platforms you're on and what you're comfortable with. But I use those examples just as ones that there are a lot of other and creative ways to be networking. And again, just proof that there are people who want to help and who are willing to offer advice and to connect on LinkedIn and to do these other things that can really be beneficial and that can lead to incredible connections with people that maybe lead to a job, but also lead to other things like hopping on a call like this and recording a podcast or contributing to an article, or 3 years from now sharing a job with you. Like, you never know what can happen from planting these seeds. And I think that is the best metaphor for networking, that if you continue to plant them, whether you need to be networking, quote unquote, we should all be networking all the time. But if you feel like you need to be networking for that next job, or even if you're super comfortable in a role and you're loving where you're at, great, network with someone, because you never know when you're going to need that seed to kind of be growing a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you bring up a really great point too, because I've even seen more TikTok videos reposted on LinkedIn than ever before. And, you know, that is I know all ages are on there, but that is like Gen Z's platform of choice by far. Yeah. And I love that they're leveraging a platform that is familiar and safe and all that other stuff for them.
I also think, that's something, I come from a background in higher education and working on college campuses. I think we are seeing a push for earlier and earlier career engagement to start to gain these skills and the knowledge around networking. So I do think students, Gen Z, and those entering the workforce kind of all the way up from there are still getting on LinkedIn and engaging. I think it's just a different level. Like, LinkedIn to many people, I think, still feels, rightfully so, a little bit more buttoned up, although it's a far more casual than it was 10 years ago or even before. But it is just a little bit different compared to, a video on TikTok where someone's like rolled out of bed and is like, hey, I got laid off today and this sucks. It's like just a little bit of a different approach. And so I think leaning into those, that's what different platforms are for ultimately.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to share, I've been, seeding it. So initially I thought I met Cassie because I saw her on a post. So someone in my network had her on their podcast, and I was listening to a clip where I think I read it, and then I went to go listen to the podcast, and I was just like, oh, I want to connect with her. Like she has some, she has some good things to say. Nonetheless, so I reached out to Cassie on LinkedIn and I was just like, hey, I saw you on such and such as podcast. Would love to connect with you and maybe we can do a podcast exchange at some point. And here we are. Also turns out while we were having that exchange, someone else, another mutual connection in our network, created a warm intro via email between us. And so obviously we were meant to connect, but nonetheless, those are like the different avenues in which, maybe if I hadn't seen that post that day and reached out to Cassie, there was still someone else in my network who was just like, okay, this is someone that you need to meet. And so this is how, like, literally what you're seeing or what you're hearing, this is the power of networking. This is how, I don't know what you shared with our mutual connection that, made her think, oh, Sabine is a good person to connect you to. But I also knew that I had read what you what you said on the other podcast. And I was just like, this is someone I want to be connected with. So at any given moment, like, we use the word networking, and I know it can feel intimidating sometimes to people, but really it's just it's making adult friends or adult associations. And once you can take away whatever the previous paradigm around networking was and just say, hey, these are cool people, they're saying cool things, they're doing cool things, I just want to be connected with them, it makes it so much easier. And very rarely will people be like, nope, I don't want to be connected with you, or nope, I don't want to accept you. I mean, they may not answer for a while and you may need to follow up, but very rarely are people like, nope, no new friends, like no new connections, no new associations. So I share that for those of you who are listening, if you feel apprehensive of just reaching out to someone and just saying, hey, I would just love to connect with you, or I'd love to have a conversation with you, just do it. The worst thing that can happen is they say no or they don't respond, and then you have to follow up. It's not the end of the day. I've seen, for the most part, most people will say yes. Most people will honor that. Most people will want to support you.
Yeah, I can't second that enough. And I also tell clients all the time, like, truly the worst thing that happens is someone says no. And also, if someone says no or they don't respond, and even after you follow up, they don't respond, if it's the true worst case scenario here, it's probably not someone who would have been a great connection for you to have anyways. And I think that's the other thing I always kind of lean into. And I think, like, not to toot our own horns, but I feel like we're a good example of this, of like, we wanted to connect, we want to engage, we value each other's experience and content and everything like that. And so it's a mutually beneficial connection. And even when it feels a little bit more one-sided, I know I have a lot of clients say that to me, of like, well, I don't have a podcast I can offer for them to be on, or I don't do these other things. And it's like, that's okay, because if someone's saying yes, they want to be there, they want to engage and interact. And that's where I think, like, be polite and professional in your outreach and in your follow-ups. But at the end of the day, if someone's not responding, probably wasn't the right connection anyways. And there are people who are the right connection.
Agreed. So as we wrap up here, Cassie, for those who are listening, if they want to connect with you, or want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do, what's the best place for them to do so?
Yeah, well, definitely find me on LinkedIn. If you search my name, I should come right up. I'm also connected with Sabine, so you can look in her connections and find me. In addition to that, I also am very active on Instagram at Career Coach Cassie. You can find me there, and links to everything else are there as well. And then last, I'll plug my own podcast, which is called Happenstance. It's on Apple and Spotify. And Sabine was a guest on my podcast as well. So if you want more of us, head over there.
Yes. And actually, I looked it up last night and I have it pulled up. So I was guest number on episode number 74, which aired in November of 2023. So if you want to just go there, of course, listen to all the episodes. But if you want to check out episode 74, which I'm pretty sure we talked about networking. I know for a fact I talked about my journey from a career perspective, and networking has been so pivotal for me, both when I was in corporate and certainly as an entrepreneur, and to this day, obviously. So be sure to check that out. And we will, of course, include those links in the show notes for those of you who are listening. So with that, Cassie, we're going to do our quick blitz session. 3 questions in under 2 minutes. Let's see how you do it.
Great.
So knowing what you know today, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a key piece of advice, what might that be?
I think my key piece of advice would be to trust your gut. I think I didn't do that as much as I should have when I was younger, and to know that even when it doesn't feel like it, it's all going to work out one way or another.
I love that. And then let's look ahead, right? We're talking 60, 70, 80, however many years from now. All of the work that you've done, all of the work that you're doing, and where you see yourself making an impact. You're looking back and you're looking at everyone that you've impacted, everyone that you've supported. What do you want the narrative to be around your legacy?
I want the narrative around my legacy, mostly personally, but also professionally, is that I am a really good friend. That is what I want my ultimate legacy to be. And I think from a more professional standpoint, I think while it's not necessarily like a friendship that I have with all of my clients and that type of stuff, but that it's a resource, that I am someone who's connecting the dots for other people, connecting people to other people, and connecting them to ultimately the careers that are going to help them have a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Awesome. And then the last question for you, because I believe leaders are readers and I love to read. Are there any books, or is there a book that has been pivotal for you in your development, either personally or professionally?
Yeah. A book that I love and that I reread often is called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch. It came out, I want to say in like 2008 or something, maybe 10. I don't remember the year it came out, but that is a book that I have read numerous times. It's a short, quick read. I feel like it always grounds me and brings me back. And basically the premise of that is kind of the same thing about trusting your gut and going after the things that you want in life and living life to the fullest. So that's a book that I always come back to.
Okay. I always say if I hear something twice, then it's an indication that it's time for me to go ahead and add that to my Audible queue there. So you're now the second person. I haven't done interviews, actual like formal interviews since Q4. And someone else mentioned that book. And that was like the first time that I was hearing it. So that is The Last Lecture. I will be adding that to the show notes as well as my Audible queue. So thank you for that.
I love it.
And before we leave, any final words of wisdom for the audience?
The last thing I'll say that we kind of teased a little bit in here is that someone else connected us. And I think that is the only other thing of networking that we didn't touch on is if all else fails, if you don't know what to do when it comes to networking, be a connector, be someone who's connecting other people. And I think that is a great way to stay on people's radars. It's a great way to give value to your own network, and probably a pretty underutilized aspect of networking. So that would be my last piece of advice for people. If you don't have another takeaway from today, think about who you know, connect to people.
Oh, I love that. It reminds me of that Zig Ziglar quote, like, I won't butcher it, but I'll put it in the show notes around, the way to get more of what you want is to help others get what they want. That is a complete paraphrase. But yes, I love that. And thank you for leaving us with those tidbits. So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, you can check out Cassie's information in the show notes. With that, we will be back next week with another female powerhouse on the Power, Purpose, and Prosperity podcast. Thank you and have a great rest of the day. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you found today's conversation helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your life, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon and send me a message, or feel free to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network, another powerhouse possibly, who you think might benefit from today's conversation. Lastly, as always, any links, any resources, or any upcoming training is included in the show notes, so be sure to check that before you leave today. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.